Hello, CFP listeners. We got another benching this week. What a surprise. What else is new? Dardoch is benched. We'll get into that a little bit. Also, some talk about the Academy League for LCS Academy, rather, maybe not coming back next year. We're not sure if Academy is dead, but we're going to talk a little bit about that and see where we think that might go. And then we're going to do something a little bit fun, I think, for our main topic this week. We're going to go through each team and we're going to rate them either Monka S, Easy, Copium, and Hopium. We'll get into that a little bit more and we'll explain what that means when we get to it. Let's start with the Academy stuff. There are rumors about LCS Academy no longer existing next year. I don't know what to think about this because Chris Greeley came out and said to Travis Gafford, no, your video's all wrong. JNT, what are you thinking here?
It's just there's so much shit going on in terms of like pivotal moves that could really affect the future of the LCS like going on right now. At the start of the split, or I guess midway through the start of the split, around like week 2, week 3, there was the whole news being broken about the possible removal of the import rule or changes being made to the import rule. And obviously, that has a huge effect on what North American League of Legends is going to look like 1, 2, 3 years in the future. And now, I think it was on, I want to say it was like Wednesday or Tuesday. Travis puts out this video basically just saying that the majority of LCS owners are in favor of removing the requirement to field an academy roster. And while Chris Greeley did push back on some of the points that Travis did make on his videos, saying that like, oh, there was no actual voting that had taken place, or LCS teams just simply can't remove the academy requirements. It's still a very interesting topic, and a topic, like I said before, that will have a big effect on the future of the LCS.
So a couple of things. Travis seems to be fairly confident that his sources say that they did vote. Now maybe and Travis also said this, maybe what Chris Greeley, the commissioner, is talking about is saying they didn't officially fill out a ballot or anything like that, but maybe they just went around the room and said, "Hey, like does anyone think that we should take a look at removing the academy thing?" And maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 out of 10 arms went up for all the representatives of each team. I don't know, right? There's no specifics that are coming out, but Travis seems pretty certain in his top or in his sources that there's at least discussion going on, and Chris Greeley seemed to kind of try to be pushing against it. And look, I'm not saying Travis is perfect because he does make mistakes sometimes, but I think that he's probably more right than what Chris Greeley is leading on, because Chris doesn't exactly have a good history of showing true transparency with the LCS. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is talks about removing the import rule. Not too long ago, Chris said there's no LCS teams that want, and I'm paraphrasing here, there's no LCS teams that want to remove the import rule. Whereas we all know, like in January or February, a video came out with a bunch of LCS, where a bunch of LCS representatives said like, yeah, they would consider it and blah blah blah, and then Jack straight up said like, you people are racist if you don't think that we should have Korean players in our league. Do you remember what I'm talking about, JNT?
Yeah, there's a little
So
shit
like,
show.
I guess what I'm saying is maybe Chris Greeley isn't trying to lie, but I don't think he's been totally truthful in what he said or completely transparent, let's say, about things in the past. So I don't know how much to trust him or how much to not trust him. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's difficult to analyze what's being said on both sides because obviously from Travis's perspective, he's not in the room and is not really knows what's going on in these situations, and he's just being fed specific information. And on Chris
Right.
Greeley's side, it's his sort of job to navigate these sort of things and sort of keep a composure around the LCS and not just let the floodgates open by revealing things on a day-to-day basis or revealing things as they come in. And I think Travis kind of mentioned this towards the end of his, not his video, but his sort of follow-up post that he made on it, is that while he doesn't agree with what Chris or how Chris Greeley has handled these past two situations with the import rule and now this academy discussion, he understands that he's in a very difficult. Chris Greeley is in a very
Right.
difficult position
Mhm.
because of what his job is and how, as I mentioned, these moves are going to affect the league.
And another thing that Travis pointed out in his video is like at the start of the year, all the LCS organizations were being like, yeah, Academy's great, and we're going to put so much time and effort and resources into our Academy squad.
And
And like, what,
amateur,
5 months later, we're talking about getting rid of the Academy League? Now, I don't want to get too far ahead because I don't know exactly what the LCS development system looks like without an academy league, maybe there's some benefits that we're not seeing here. But it definitely looks very black and white, the comparison of what's being talked about now versus the when compared to what was being talked about back in January or February. It just seems so different, so night and day, and who the hell knows what to think with some inconsistencies being fed to us.
Yeah, and like, should this be the truth? It's definitely very hypocritical because I think a lot of the LCS orgs and the LCS themselves were doing a lot of damage control when the whole import rule stuff was going on. And everyone's talking about, oh, should you remove the import rule? It's going to completely ruin native NA talent. And there's already limited pathways and limited areas to show your skills right now in North America. And I think that's why, Proving Grounds was expanded and an amateur was created. But as you just said, 5 months later, we're just going to straight up remove those things. It's definitely a bit hypocritical.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate here because, like I said, maybe there's a chance that this is actually a good thing for the league. And I'm not going to say how likely or unlikely this is, but I'm going to float the idea that I floated by to you earlier, JNT. What if you're a team like TSM or Cloud9 or Team Liquid, basically the rich teams, who is saying like, look, I'm spending all this money on academy players and we're not really getting much out of it because they have to play in a North American environment. What if I could keep these players, not force them to play in academy, but send them to boot camp permanently in Korea or Europe? Now, I'm not going to pretend to know what the costs are to do that. Maybe it's cheaper than running an academy team. Maybe it's way more expensive. Who knows? But maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe that's why teams like that would be like, hey, maybe I have a better chance of developing without an academy league. And maybe it's just better to send them overseas and put them in a better environment for practice. Maybe.
Yeah, I can agree to that to some extent, but I think it would actually be a bit of a different situation. I would think that they might use that sort of situation to potentially look at, rookie imports as opposed to importing older, more quote unquote veteran players. You could also use that sort of a boot camping system to find and then develop young European players and then bring them over to North America. It's this isn't like a very good example because my examples are going to be like Jensen and Bjergsen, very young and green players at the time who were brought over to North America, who technically were imports, but I think are considered North American players by the majority of people. Yes,
because they've been here for so long.
Yes, yeah. Bjergsen did play on Copenhagen Wolves back in the day, and Jensen was on the SK Gaming roster at one point, was their sub mid laner. But that didn't change the fact from a big North American org bringing them over at an early stage of their career and molding them into the best players in the league. Basically, Bjergsen and Jensen are probably the number 1 and 2 top LCS mid laners of all time. And so I think should they sort of to go with your idea, I think it would sort of be more towards to find imports that could be brought in at a younger age than recycling older ones from previous leagues.
And why not, right? If you're setting up the boot camp for North American players, why not, like you're saying, invite in those European players or Korean players, whatever it is, wherever you are. You want to set up a system where you can develop talent regardless of where they're from, but it's even that more valuable if they happen to be North American players that just went over to Europe or to Korea to boot camp, right? Because then they don't take up an import slot.
Yeah, and just to circle back to the topic in the first place, in Travis's video originally, he was in contact with the Players Association, and I think the both of us are very interested to see how the Players Association is going to be involved in all of this. And he got a statement from them basically saying that the Players Association doesn't believe that this is a good move for North America, and is kind of just being used as a way for organizations to quote unquote cut costs, which from my perspective seems like the primary idea for this whole situation in the first place, is because teams, or the majority of teams, you could argue, aren't getting the value out of academy that they need, like that fills the financial cost of it, and they would rather use that time and resources into maybe their amateur team, or maybe just more time and effort towards their main team.
Right, because basically what you're saying is, let's say you're spending so much money, and maybe it's not that much money, but let's say you're spending X dollars on your academy team, and you never call anyone up just because they're not good enough. That's where you got team owners that are probably sitting there going, "Why am I spending so much money on this academy squad and getting them a gaming house and all this stuff that comes with if I can never actually play these players?" Now, Cloud9 is an exception, clearly, because they do regularly bring up these players. but most of the teams aren't really bringing up that many players from academy, right?
Yeah, and you could also argue, actually, I would argue the majority of cases where an academy player is brought up to the LCS level is due to underperformances and due to like just a change being needed, not that they are actually LCS proven or that they
Well,
are
that's what we've
LCS
seen as
ready.
of late,
Well,
right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
but even in like past instances, a player will get brought up in the academy for 1 to 2 weeks because the team may believe that they need to change, or a team may think that, hey, this guy's underperforming, or something just as simple as, hey, we need to send a message to this player that his spot's not safe and he needs to work harder. Because it does feel like in the majority of cases, an LCS player who's brought up from academy to the LCS mid split or whatever, I would
Hmm.
say like 90% of the time doesn't work out.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah, you make an interesting point. It seems like the academy team has been there for punitive reasons, just to punish the LCS pros that aren't working hard enough, just so that there's someone there to replace them. It seems like that's kind of been what it's not, that's not the intention of academy, but that's kind of been what it's been, you know? Like that's what you've seen with Jenkins and with King as of recent, and more especially.
Mm-hmm.
Um okay, yeah, another thing I wanted to say about this, and I think Travis made a point of this in his video as well, was that Greeley had a bunch of things to say after Travis came out with the video. But to Travis's point, he asked questions about it to the Riot PR team about 4 days prior to that, and they decided to dodge his question. And I guess they have every right to dodge the questions, sure. But what I would argue is if you don't want information getting out that's incorrect, then maybe you answer the fucking questions
Yeah,
that the media has for you.
you gotta like, if you're gonna be all pissy about it, it would have just been
Yeah,
better to get ahead of it. And I think
right.
it again kind of circles back to a lot of Travis's uh what's the word? Basically just how he doesn't like how media and communication between the media and Riot is going on now with the whole pre-submitting questions and the way that they've changed to these press conferences, also with pre-submitted questions. It's kind of a way for Chris Greeley to dodge these questions, and then unfortunately a situation like this can arise from that.
Yeah, it definitely well, and that's what we talked about it last week. And there's a lot of people that totally agree with him that like, look, you got to be more transparent and you have to be able to answer to media and not just pick and choose which questions you want to answer, because if you do that, that's where misinformation gets out there. And you can, in my opinion, you can't complain that misinformation is what's getting out there when you're not the ones answering the questions that need to be answered in the first place. So a little bit of a mess going on. I don't have too much more to say about it. All I have to say is if academy is no longer going to exist, which we're not there yet, we don't know if that's the case. I am very worried and I am very curious as to what replacement looks like, because you definitely need something feeding some talent into the LCS, because there's already been a lack of that for well, years now.
Yeah, the only other parallel to really draw to it is how the LEC has now removed the requirements for their teams to run a European League team. And I think that situation is completely different because of the respect and the level that is the regional leagues and is EU Masters, because it is a proven and viable pathway to getting into the LEC. We see a ton of players win EU Masters or winning EU Masters teams get picked up by the LEC organizations and are fantastic players. I mean, the whole before Mad Lions joined the LEC and were the Mad Lions in the regional leagues, they had players like what was it, Nemesis, Selfmade, Crown Shot. There was one other player who was on that roster. I think he was the top laner. I don't remember who it was. You have Adam and Fnatic now. I think Elyoya was one of those guys. Trimby, support on Rogue, was one of those guys. I think Inspired was a regional league jungler as well. Like, there are a ton of big name talent in the LEC that you go back 2-3 years ago, even maybe 1 year ago, for players like Elyoya, and they were winning EU Masters and they were dominating the regional scene. Whereas in North American Academy, it's just not how it works. Like, winning Academy
Hmm.
does not translate to you being an average LCS level talent. Just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Completely agree. All right, do you want to move on to our bench update? That our weekly bench update, it
It's
seems.
becoming a weekly topic at this point.
I, like I don't know what to say. It's not even like, yeah, we get to talk about another benching. Like 3 weeks ago, it was like, damn, this is interesting stuff. It's getting a little bit dull. But Dardoch's been benched now. um, and you know what's interesting? So people complain about Jenkins replacing Alfari, and yes, there's a drop off there, and King replacing Sven, and yes, there's a drop off
Mhm.
there. But I haven't seen much complaint about the drop off from Acadian versus Dardoch. I think Dardoch is miles ahead of Acadian. But I mean, I'm not saying that means the benching is unwarranted because there's a good chance Dardoch did something. But yeah, I'm just it's interesting to me that people are all upset at Cloud9 and TL, not as upset with Dignitas.
Yeah, I do. To go to the defense of Dardoch for a little bit, he does have this stigma around him,
Yep.
where he is benched from a team or he is on a new team. It's always because it was his fault or he did something within that team to ruin it, basically. And I would argue that he is one of the most important players to
Hmm.
Dignitas' success in the spring split and towards the start of the summer split. Yes, I think he had a really bad game on Friday when he
Yep.
basically had the entirety of the Dignitas lead and threw it away. I don't forget who they were playing just off the top of my head, but he was
Wasn't
playing the
that
Rumble.
Golden Guardians?
Yeah, he
They lost
was.
to Golden Guardians, I think.
Yeah, well, the game I'm talking about is where he was playing Rumble Jungle, and he was up like 3-1 early on. He like had two really bad invades that cost his team dragons, and he had like he had a bunch of really bad. He just had a really bad game, and we find out at the end of the day that he's getting subbed out for Acadian. And I think if you go back and you look at Dardoch's time on Dignitas, and he's been one of their best players. I had him as the third best jungler coming at a spring split, mainly just due to his role on the team and what he does for the team, because I think he's super versatile. I think he works really well with Aframu in terms of coordinating engages for the team. And you look at this Dignitas roster now, and it feels like the magic is just completely gone with
So
Acadian
I
and
agree.
Yasui. And
I think I agree with just about everything you said there. I think he is the you know how every team needs a proactive guy and we meme all the time about how teams need to be proactive. He's that guy. He's the guy that is starting most of their plays. Now I will say it's I don't want to throw shade towards Afro because Afro does set up a lot of plays himself as well. But Dardoch has been their best player this split, in my opinion. And actually, they talked a little bit about this on Hotline League tonight. And the caller said that he thought Dardoch was their best player, and a few of them all said, well, Dignitas's bot lane, and I actually agree Dig's bot lane is good, but I
not
think
this
no
split.
doubt Dardoch. Yeah, exactly. I think no doubt Dardoch has been their best player this split. And I mean, it's showing. Last week, I mentioned how I actually thought that Dignitas was being underrated, and I was all hyped for this team. Dardoch has one bad game. He's subbed out, and they put in Acadian, and Acadian looks awful, man. And
Yeah.
now, again, that doesn't mean that the benching isn't fair because Dardoch may have done something. You mentioned that he has this stigma. Well, he's brought that stigma upon himself over years of, I guess, bad behavior, right? Like, there's a reason that stigma exists, and I have to believe it is his fault. But it's just so sad to me to see a team that I thought shouldn't even be considered a good team, but has been a good team, just fall off a cliff all because of a couple benchings that make no sense, including the Saligo one for Yusui.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to track this one specifically because I think if you look at both Team Liquid and Cloud9, yes, they've benched two of their best players on their respective teams, but the rest of the team can sort of make up the difference. Whereas I
Yep.
think if you look on Dignitas, you could argue for the first three games that we saw of Saligo, he was one of the more impactful players in the first
He
three
had a
games of the
great
split.
first weekend.
And
He had a
and
really
so did
great first
Dardoch, and I
weekend.
think Dardoch had a pretty solid
Mhm.
second week, despite some losses from Dignitas. But
Yep.
if we're just to like straight up talk about their team, I don't think their bot lane was as good as they were in spring. I don't think Fake God is as good as he was in spring, and I think Saligo and Dardoch were carrying this team pretty hard in the first 2 weeks of the season, and we see them gone now. We have Yusui and Acadian in, and it just feels like this Dig team has no identity. They have no like motor basically. Like they're just playing the game. There's nothing going on. Like you said, there's no proactivity, and it kind of sucks to see like Dignitas do some more self implosion after again, I will continue to mention this until something good happens with this team with substitution, because they completely fucked themselves over in 2020 summer by keeping Viper in and not starting Lorlo.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Lorlo. I love that guy. I think he was been super underrated most of his career. I think, yeah, he had a bad time when he was on the back half of his TL career, but I think he's truly deserves a second chance. And I think Dignitas fucked him over in summer, and I hope we see him again. And Dignitas is really, they're not gaining my confidence with their substitutions.
Yeah, I completely agree. The other thing I want to touch on is back to the Alfari one, because Thorin made a video. Did you end up watching that?
I did, yeah.
I just don't like that video whatsoever. Look, sometimes you have to how do I want to word this? Sometimes there is times to speculate, and we do that a ton. But we mentioned that, guys, this is pure speculation. Thorin made a video because he had a source, and I think that his take is just so incredibly biased that I can't take it at face value. He says, I have a source that says that Jad is bad with this and bad with that, and that Jad's such a bad guy. And it's like, I just don't buy that. I just don't. Look, I can't pretend I know Jat, but we've seen Jat so much over the years, whether it be on broadcast, whether it be in interviews, and there's nothing about Jat that screams like he's a bad guy or anything like that. And so I just believe that there has to be two sides to this story, and maybe the source could be Alfari. I don't know. Maybe it's someone that is friends with Alfari. I don't know. But the point is, I think I think Thorin is really just talking out of his ass, and I don't think that going off a source from another player is enough to be like, well, Jat must be a terrible coach. I don't buy it.
Yeah, it was a, I'm going to call it an interesting video because I think he did present some good and bad points, more bad than good, I would say. The main thing that's interesting to me is we mentioned this last week, but going back to that Team Liquid statement that they put out about Alfari, June 27th is when he's supposedly going to rejoin the team. And so I wonder again if he's going to get put in right away, if he's going to like do some warm up in academy or whatnot. But the other thing that was kind of interesting that happened this week was, I don't know if you saw this. I didn't post this on any of our discords, but there was this photo on like the main Team Liquid page talking about that they had this like barbecue on the weekend or something.
Oh, yeah.
And Alfari was just chilling there in the background, looking all smug as fuck. And I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. And like, I think Thorin referenced that in his video or something like that, and was saying how like, I think he was trying to make the point that like Jat is like benching Alfari, but like the org obviously is not having it, and they want him to come back in, and that's why he's all buddy with them. Some bullshit. I don't know. Like again, pure speculation that he's making it seem like it's fact. But I just thought that was hilarious looking at that photo.
Yeah, and so I think it's hilarious too. I did see it. And that's the one thing that I want to make clear. It's not necessarily that Thorin's wrong. He might be right. But I think the way he presents it is as if there's no way he's wrong and that it's absolutely Jat's fault and he's 100% sure, and that's just like, that I don't buy. There's no way in my mind that he absolutely knows just because he talked with someone in the team. Like, there's always two sides to every story when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Always. So for me, I think there's a lot of conjecture, and he's presenting it almost as if it's fact. And so I didn't necessarily like the video, but I mean, maybe he's right. Maybe Jat is absolutely cancer coaching that team. I don't know, but I don't pretend to know is what I'll say. Okay, one last thing about the whole benching altogether, about our benching update, is that people have started talking about the bench lineup. And I'm not going to lie, the bench lineup's starting to look pretty fucking good. So if you had Alfari, Ardok, Saligo, Sven, and we're lacking on a support here, but you could go with Diamond, who was benched last split, Newbie, who was benched at the end, and then DeMonte, who you would have to lane swap. How good is this team?
They'd be probably a middle of the pack team, I would think. Like, at least. They would have Alfari, Sven, and Saligo, who I think are all very solid. Who's the jungler again? Dardoch?
Dardoch, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know exactly how Dardoch would fit into that team, because I would consider him right now more of a role player than like a... Not like a plug-and-play kind of player. So I don't know how that would look. But I think this would be a decent team.
Reformed Beans in the live chat makes a good point. I forgot to make this clear. Of course, like these are all guys that have been benched, right? So there's a good chance that maybe they wouldn't all get along. Okay, we're talking totally hypothetical here, just skill, guys, because of course I wouldn't ever want to take a team full of bench players. I feel like there's has to be a chance of some egos there.
We'll call them NA
Yeah,
Vitality.
we'll pretend that they're like all like nice guy level of like Apollo.
Suicide Squad.
Okay.
That's a good one.
They have the nice guy level of Apollo. Okay, we pretend they're all Apollo as far as nice guy, but then skill level, how good is this team?
I think middle of the pack.
That's what I think as well. I think they'd probably finish 4 or 5. They probably beat the current iteration of Dignitas.
Yes.
Which is weird. Which is
100%.
that's something. That's just so interesting to me that that's how good this bench lineup has gotten. It's literally one of the best players from every team almost. I mean, Saligo, I wouldn't argue that, but and then you got holes in the support. But the point is, this would be a good team, and that's kind of whack to me. Okay, you want to get into the main topic?
Yeah.
This should be fun, I think.
Mhm.
JNT and I decided to grade them. We were going to grade them 1 to 5, but we're like, what's something that's more fun? So we decided to use some better Twitch TV emotes to measure these teams. Like I said before, so it's going to be either Monka S, Easy, Copium, or Hopium. And I think we're just going to start top through bottom, right? We're going to go from
Yeah,
number
yeah.
1 to 10. Okay, go ahead, JNT. Throw up our first ones. What do you got?
Well, we got
It's a
TSM
little
up
bit.
first because they're in first place. But hopefully this picture will get the idea of what we're gonna go for. So I have TSM with the easy emote.
Okay,
and you
tell me
have
why
them.
they are easy. Tell me why you got an easy take with TSM.
Well, kind of to piggyback off of my thoughts from TSM last week, is while I don't think that this team has the highest ceiling or is going to be a top level team in terms of like even number 1 in North America or going international, I think that in terms of, they're playing in the LCS, they're in North America, I think they got it on lock. Like, I don't see this team doing any worse than 4th. Like, I think 4th is their absolute floor. But with the current form of Team Liquid and Cloud9, I think should that continue, they have a chance to go up from that. And I think 4th at the very minimum for playoffs is a good thing. And then all they need to do is pass one team to make it to Worlds. So,
Well,
easy
they're
clap.
in first. They're in first right now, and I have to eat my words. I mean, I decided to tweet this out just to be totally, I don't know, honest, I guess. The take that I tried to get on Hotline League for last week was that TSM wouldn't finish a weekend in first place, and immediately they finished in first place. Kind of like the opposite to the Mark Z thing. Um, hey, it happens. The thing is, the take that I went with, I still kind of agree with though that TSM is very inconsistent. I just didn't realize how inconsistent the other top teams in North America would be, and well, I guess I may have misjudged. I guess I didn't see a C903 coming, but I don't think most people did. To be
Especially with the
honest.
teams that they were playing.
Sure, that's the other thing as well. But okay, with TSM, I went Hopium because I don't think that they're all that consistent. I can't pretend that last week they didn't kind of struggle, right? Like they didn't look so great just last week. Like this is not so long ago. And not to mention, I even think this week they could have easily lost that game to
Well,
Immortals.
they should have. But
They
Immortals.
should have lost that game to Immortals, sure. But the point is that TSM still has some good, and you see it every once in a while. I thought Huni looked so good this weekend, and so that's why I'm still going with Hopium. I still have hope for this team because every once in a while we see them look really good, and so I can't go with easy because of how they were last week. I just can't. There's no way I think that TSM is easy first place. I'm going with Hopium, and the Hopium is that they stay as good as they were this week. That is my Hopium take for TSM.
Yeah, I guess for me, like like I'm giving them the easy relative to their expectations, because I thought coming into the split, like in terms of overall roster strength, I thought they were going to be the number 4 team. And looking at it right now, they're sitting in first place, and you could argue they are looking better than 2 teams that should definitely be ahead of them, a team like Cloud9. And so for TSM, it's kind of like their game. It's their game to lose for a little bit.
So just another thing, because in the live chat, someone's asking, is Hopium better than Easy? Me personally, I didn't go a route of like this one is better than that one. It's just how I view this team. I would say probably Easy means that they're better, I guess. Like, but like I didn't necessarily look at it that way. Did you?
Well, it's not that one is better than the other. It's just like what your outlook on the team is like. And
Yeah,
for me,
yeah.
with my expectations of TSM and how I thought they were going to be coming into the split, I am pleasantly surprised with what's gone on. And I think due to the struggles with the other teams, it just greatly increases their position going forward.
He says, I don't know what hopium is. Hopium is just that you have hope for this team. It's like a hope take. Like, what's a good example? Like C9 fans would hope that Sven comes back. Although that might be a copium take at this point because there's a lot of word that maybe
CLG's gonna
won't be
win
coming back.
NA or something like that's a hopium take.
Yeah, like you have hope for a team, or copium would be that you're trying to find a way to cope with the problems. Who would be an obvious? I'll shine a light on one of my copium takes. Da, da, da. Who's a copium take? I guess Golden Guardians is copium because I guess later on I'm gonna say that like, well, they they've been winning some games, but I mean that's hey, everything looks good because they're starting to win some games, but in the end they're gonna finish fucking 10th because they only have 6 wins. That's a copium take. Like, yeah, everything's okay. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Just for people that are a little confused with the BTT BT like better Twitch TV emotes. Anyways, back into TSM. Yeah, I think Huni actually looked really, really good this weekend, and I didn't see that much about him. I thought that Immortals game, I thought he hard 1v9 that game.
Oh, yeah, 100%. He
He
was the
smashed
only reason they
lane.
won that game.
Yeah, he smashed lane. He continued to find picks throughout the whole game, and then was the one that was responsible for the backdoor. I don't know what more you could ask for out of Huni in that game.
Yeah, he hard carried that game from start to finish. They should have 100% lost that game, regardless of all the shenanigans that went on at the end. And Hooney just kept him in it the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to go next? Who's next
Yeah.
on the list?
100T,
100
our second place team.
For me, I went easy. Okay, you also went easy. The reason I went easy, so they did lose. Who did they lost to CLG, right?
Yep, the God Squad.
Yeah, let's fucking go CLG. But anyways, so you would think 100 Thieves losing to CLG is kind of like an uh-oh. I would say that game in particular, CLG just played a really good comp and they played it very, very well. It's not so much that 100 Thieves played poorly. And for the most part, we have seen 100 Thieves play really, really well since the start of summer. This is the only team that to me has looked consistently good, and that's why I gave them the easy. Like they are winning easy right now, and I think they are easily a top team in the league. No real standout struggles at the moment.
Yeah, they're tied for the best record so far in summer with TSM at 7-2. Um, uh, to me, I would still rate this team above TSM. They absolutely destroyed TSM in week
Like in power
two.
rankings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this team right now, I would put 100 Thieves as the best team in the league.
Agreed.
Again, I will still roll with the take that I've been rolling with since feels like February of spring split. That someday is maybe he's not an issue right now, but I think when 100 Thieves is going into best of fives against other top teams in the league who presumably will have very strong top laners. I'm assuming Alfari is going to be coming back to Team Liquid. He's going to be going up against players like Fudge, Huni, and Alfari, who I believe are much better than Someday currently. And I think, while 100 Thieves will continue to dominate the majority of LCS teams going for the rest of the split, I think he's like my main point of concern for this team. But I think
Yeah.
if he can sort of fill the impact style of role where you're not hard losing the game, but you're also having a lot of pressure on the map, whether that is playing some sort of split push style of champion and absorbing ganks, or playing a very early game centric champion and making plays around the map for your team. I think that can be a successful strategy because, as I've mentioned, I think the carry someday days are way behind us.
As time goes on, I'm starting to agree with you more and more. But like I said last week, I'm still not ready to give up on Someday just yet. I do need to give some props to Closer because I think that Diana game this weekend was probably the hardest carry we've seen this year. We've seen some good ones, like we saw out of Huni against Immortals this weekend. or Abadage on the Akali last week, or was it last? I think it was last week. We've seen some good carry performances. I think the Diana one was probably the biggest 1v9 we've seen this summer. Am I missing one?
I would go with that.
He looked really fucking good in that game. So huge props to him for that. And then I think Huhi has gotten back to his regular self. I think he's been a fantastic support. He is really, I want to say, I actually think Huhi's looking like the best support right now. I think he's looked better than Sword Art. He's looked better than Vulcan, and I think he's looked better than Core JJ. I think Huhi has been the best support this summer.
Yeah, I think before this week, I would have argued Core JJ. But and it was funny because when I was making my game predictions for Sunday's match of Team Liquid versus 100 Thieves, I thought that bot lane was going to be Team Liquid's biggest strength going into that match, and we clearly saw that the 100 Thieves bot had the edge in the 2v2.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. I just think 100 Thieves bot lane is the best bot lane right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean,
it would be
I wouldn't
a tough
disagree
sell
with
for
it.
me. Yeah, it would be a tough sell for me on another team at the moment. But yeah, anyways, things really looking good for 100 Thieves. I will say Abadage struggled a little bit this weekend too. Just need to throw that in there because he looked so good in week 1 and 2. I still thought he looked good in week 3, just not as good as week 1 and 2. And that's the last thing I'll have to say on 100 Thieves. Still,
Yeah.
everything looking easy for them. They're looking good.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we saw another collapse like we did last split. Very
All right,
surprised at that.
Next up, we got CLOWN9. I wonder
Uh-oh.
what you did with this one. Okay, we both did the copium take. Okay, this is there's a bunch of copium takes with CLOWN9. Where do you start? Well, they're trying to draft different stuff. Last week, Fudge said that. What did he say? I have his quote here somewhere. We actually have plans to play different champions next week, which are probably
They
going to
did
be a
that.
bit off meta. Yeah, I don't really remember how much they played that was different. How much did they play that was way off? Refresh my memory here.
I don't know. They played the one Blabber Diana jungle game. Even though closer, completely 1v9 on the champ, I still don't think that champ is that great. I think it's good in very fast paced, hectic games when there's there's a lot of influx of gold in the early game, and those are the style of games that Diana can just run over by just simply dealing more damage faster than you can. But in your more controlled, slow games, I think Diana is a really bad champion.
But anyways, that aside, there's plenty of other copium takes you can go with. You can go with, well, it's okay. Eventually Sven will come in and everything's going to be fine when that happens. But the real issue is I think they look incredibly inconsistent. Last week I called out TSM for being inconsistent. Well, guess what? Cloud9 is fucking inconsistent, man. Oh my God. Blabber is sometimes just absolutely running it down. Perks, same thing. Sometimes they're absolutely popping off. All of a sudden, Blabber and Fudge forget how to pull off a dive. With the Blabber, I don't know why he hit his Q so early. Like they were there. What game was that?
You're talking about the top lane dive against TSM where they went one
Yeah,
for
it
one
was
when
against
it was like a
TSM.
3-for-1 dive where it should have been like easy. And
Yes,
Blabber
it should have been so free.
Blabber fucked up tanking the tower and left tanking tower with 400 HP.
So early.
Yeah.
He flashed out really early, and then after Fudge took turret aggro, he could have flashed out and didn't. I don't want to make dives sound like they're super easy because diving is not that easy. But I will say that Cloud9 has never had issues in juggling turret aggro to make a dive, and that's something that we haven't really seen, and now we're starting to see it, and we see this team go 4-5. The truth is, things look really, really bad right now, but there's a bunch of reasons why everything's gonna be okay in the end. So it's got to be. This to me seemed like a very obvious copium take for Cloud9.
Yeah. For me, I talked a little bit about this on Twitter after the Cloud9 game against TSM, but as it is right now, I'd be pretty surprised to see Sven not sub back in for next week. I think basically what I put on Twitter was that it feels like Cloud9 has no intention of playing around King, because through 9 weeks of the split, while King hasn't been a huge inter or anything like that, he's had a couple of int moments, like the Kaisa game against Team Liquid, or not Team Liquid, Golden Guardians, and then his Ezreal towards the end of the EG game on Friday. It just feels like that he doesn't have a lot of game impact, that he basically is doing nothing for the first 15 minutes of the game apart from pushing bot lane. And one thing that I really criticized King for this week was, I believe it was their game against Immortals, where Cloud9 opted to pick the lane dominant sort of lane with Ezreal Karma against, what was it, like Tristana plus something else, and they had a really early 20 CS lead, and then Vulcan just completely abandoned the lane and roamed on Karma for about 10 minutes, basically removing the whole lead they had in the bot lane, and then King was playing off the back foot, wasn't rotating to plays early enough, and you clearly saw in that Immortals game, Immortals just really take it to Cloud9 and force a lot of fights in these 3v2s, 4v3s, and 5v4s, because it just feels like King is one step behind, and he's not at all involved in the game plan for Cloud9.
So I pretty much just agree with what you say. I don't think King has looked very good. I think there's been a noticeable drop off from Sven, as to be expected, but he does need to be replaced. If you need to win right now, he needs to be replaced. Now, maybe the Cloud9 is saying, look, we don't need to win right now. We know we're going to make playoffs. Sven really fucked up and he doesn't deserve to play right now. Again, we don't know the reason why he's being benched. And so I won't be surprised if Sven is still benched next week. I won't, because we still don't know what it is that he's benched for in the first place.
The thing
But
what
if you're in we need to start winning and you're in urgent mode, you got to put Sven back in.
Yeah, the thing is for me, I don't think, I think Cloud9 has lost their luxury of their sort of buffer that they had of, they were clearly the best team. Okay, I shouldn't say clearly because they got 3-2 Team Liquid in the finals. They were the best team in North America last split. There was a lot of hype around this team going into MSI. Yes, they went to MSI and failed, but they were still expected to come back to North America and be a dominant team. They haven't. They went 4-5 in the first round robin of the season. They've struggled in pretty much every role. I think the only role that hasn't struggled a ton is top lane with Fudge, and that was the player that, it was expected that Cloud9 was going to have to play, kind of, patch holes along the way to like fix
I would
up.
say he struggled, honestly. I think Fudge has struggled as well. I think every role they've struggled,
I
honestly.
think he had a better. I think he had a pretty bad this past week, but I think his first 2 weeks were pretty solid for the most part. But my whole point is that Cloud9 doesn't have the luxury of, you know, they sort of had this aura about them where it was like, if we get a lead, we're gonna smash you. And I think Azale was pretty like, he was kind of hitting the nail on the head with this on Twitter. Was basically saying that like, in a lot of these games, Cloud9 is still getting significant early game leads, whether it's 2 dragons, whether it's 1 to 2,000 gold leads, but they just aren't doing a ton with it anymore. It feels like Blabber's having less and less impact on the game. I thought that it was like the game against TSM, I thought it was like the most passive we've ever seen Blabber, despite that one top dive. It was just a bunch of like playing off of lane pressures, and you just look at the other side on TSM's roster, and Speak is just like fucking going in on Volley Bear, flash queuing people on cooldown, getting kills in mid top, and then getting kills on Blabber as well. And it just felt that like Blabber was not being Blabber whatsoever in that game.
Yeah, well, and you have to wonder if maybe they're trying a different play style, and the thing is, that's the weird thing, is that Blabber has always been the guy that's going to go ham, and you usually play around Blabber, and maybe we're starting to see that issue kind of rise. Maybe if we're not playing around Blabber, maybe that's not the time you want Blabber on your roster. I don't know. But we're definitely seeing C9 struggle, and I think it's all copium takes from here because there's a lot of bad right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wouldn't. I considered rating them Monka S, but again, there's so much that can change, and Cloud9, you just have to believe that they have the right resources to turn this stuff around. So that's why I couldn't go with the Monka S take. But yeah, they've looked pretty rough. The other thing that I'll say about the King thing as well is that even though I say if you want to win right now, you need to put Sven back in, that is not fixing or solving all of your problems, like we mentioned. It's weird because it's this situation where it feels like King is being scapegoated, but he also kind of should be scapegoated because like he is also part of the problem. It's a really weird dynamic. I don't know, but it's
Yeah.
really just strange what we're seeing out of Cloud9.
Alrighty. You got Team Liquid up next. A bit more of the same. We both have them as Copium, but
Interesting.
it feels like they're not quite in the same. I wouldn't even. Well, it's not as Copium as it is with Team Liquid as it is C9. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I thought that you were gonna put them as Hopium. Honestly, that's what I thought. I was gonna be alone on this one. So why did you go with the Copium route rather?
Well, I think before this weekend, I would have probably left them as like Hopium or an Easy because I thought that, yes, they obviously, Jenkins is a clear drop off from Alfari. And yes, I do think that Santorin could potentially have some champion pool issues. I only say that because we've only seen him play Rumble this split pretty much. And the games that he's not played Rumble, he had 2 Volibear games and 1 Sensao game, and he looked like absolute shit in those. So it's kind of hard to like make an affirmative statement because your sample size doesn't really support that. But Jensen and Core JJ didn't have great weekends this weekend, and I thought that those were by far and away Team Liquid's 2 best players so far this split. And let's be honest here, Core JJ got completely shit on in their game against 100 Thieves, and while Jensen kind of did have some pop off moments in that game, he also had a bad game against. He had a bad game earlier in the week.
He had a good Viego game, though, right? He had a pretty good pop-off Viego game, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I just don't think that Jensen this week was as good as he was the previous 2.
Well, I didn't think he looked that great in the previous 2, and that's one of the reasons why I went with Copium.
Oh, I was thinking his EG game from last week, my bad.
Because Jensen really struggled on the Viego prior, right? And it was like, man, yeah. He's really struggling. Well, now he had a good game on Viego. It's like, hey, everything's going to be okay. He can play the Viego. Everything's fine. Or the other Copium take is, well, hey, you know what? Jenkins looks great in the top lane. His GP's fantastic, which I would agree his GP is good. But we've seen a lot of GP and not much else. And so while I think he deserves full credit for being a good gangplank, you're going to need to play a little bit more. He had a good Akali game where he 1v9'd on the Akali game. But you still need to see a little bit more for me to be convinced that he's going to be able to really hold his own in the top lane, because we know the replacement is Alfari. And I mean, we don't know exactly when Alfari is coming back. They say that he should be back for the 27th, but I don't know if they've confirmed 100% that that's happening or not. So for me, that's why I go with the Copium, because there is struggles pretty much everywhere. Santorin, while he's had some good performances, he's had some bad, right? And same thing with Core JJ. And I would say Tactical, the only champion that I remember him really looking good on is the Varus game, where you're just playing Poke Varus. And not that like, oh, you're playing Poke Varus, you don't deserve any credit for that, but it is a little bit more safer. You can stand back and just use your poke, so yeah. I'm not that sold on Tactical this split.
I think his Ezreal was all right. He had some int moments on it, but for the most part, it was all right. But yeah, I think Team Liquid is in a similar situation to Cloud9, just not as bad from what we've seen out of their play.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, though, I do actually, and this is a Copium take as well, I do believe, similar to Cloud9, that at the end of the split, I'm expecting TL to look a lot better than they're looking now. And so, yeah, that's why it's not so much of a panic mode yet for this team. I think that when the time comes, you probably will have Alfari back, and you probably will have Jensen stepping up, because when have we not seen Jensen have a good season, right? We've seen him have bad games or bad weeks, but in the end, Jensen always has a good season. Same thing with Core JJ. And so while these guys have struggled a little bit, I'm not really anticipating it lasting very long.
Alrighty. Evil Geniuses up next.
Okay, what do we got here? Hey, all right. Both of us going with the Hopium take. I think one of the reasons I went with Hopium is because of how bad their split started and how they're starting to pick up some wins. The weird thing about this team is that they lose to everyone they should beat, and they beat everyone that they should lose to. And so, honestly, I could totally see a world where you went with just about anything for this team. So it's funny that we both went with the Hopium.
It's really, really hard for me to judge this team. I honestly, I feel like we're not going to get a solid answer because of just what Jisuke brings to the game, and what he brings is just complete chaos. As you kind of mentioned, EG wins the games they're supposed to lose and loses the game they're supposed to win. And it feels like Jizuke, for whatever reason, really steps up his game when he's playing up against, your top LCS level mid laners. He had a really good game against Cloud9. He had a really good game against Team Liquid last week. But against your more like average LCS players, he's doing some questionable things.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just the trajectory, I think, is why we both go with Hopium. Because they're starting to pick up those wins after such a bad start, like we mentioned. Like everything was so doom and gloom at the start of the split. Everyone was in the middle, in the off season rather. Everyone would have said like EG looked like a solid average team. Maybe they can make a push and have a good playoff run. And then they just shit the bed right off the bat, and it was like, well, now I don't know what to think about this team with Jizuke inting at least twice per game, at least. Well, now he's starting to pick up some carry for performances, and so it's like, hey, everything, maybe everything's okay. It just was a bad start, but everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah, yeah, it just feels like my opinion on this team is probably going to continue to change week to week because they could have another 0-3 week and I'll be feeling like, oh, Jizuke is the biggest fucking Inter I've ever seen. Like, what's going on with this team? And then they've had 2 back-to-back 2-1 weekends. And like you just mentioned, they flame out of playoffs at the end of spring split, so you don't know what to think. And then they start off the split 0-3, and then they just have 2-1 weekends in a row. So
Who did Jizuke play Rise into? His Rise looked pretty good. I mean, Rise isn't that difficult for Jizuke. He's played it many times. Was that against Cloud9?
yeah, that was the Cloud9 game where he played
Yeah,
when
yeah.
Perks was playing Akali, and he didn't necessarily shut on him. Well, he kind of shit on him because he was up in lane big, but he just played a really good game.
Yeah, that's when you know you got problems, when you can't win on Akali. Just for those that don't know, Akali has like a 75% win rate across major regions right now, something like that.
It's
She's
a bit
winning a
broken.
lot. Yeah, that champion is kind of broken. I'm honestly surprised we see so much Akali. You would think it would be banned a lot more often.
It should
Um,
be.
like it has negative CSD in lane, so like people maybe they just think you're gonna lose lane with it. It's like, yeah, you probably are, but you're gonna 1v9 after, so hey.
All right. Who do we have up next? Dignitas up next.
I think we're both in the same boat here. What do we got?
Yeah, I'm just give me a. Well, they're looking Monka S. Let's just say that.
Yeah, is the stream delayed? I can't see
No,
it
I
anymore.
haven't pulled it up. I'm just a bit behind here.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely looking Monka S. Where do you start? I guess we talked about Dardoch being benched already and how that's obviously just a really bad thing. We think that he's been their best player. Well, anytime you sub out your absolute best player who's been the one that is carrying these games or has been the one that's making all of these plays, as soon as you take that out, you're kind of taking out the lifeblood of a team, if you will. And so, with how bad Acadian looked as well, yeah, monk ass. I mentioned to you before the weekend even started. So I had predicted Dignitas to beat TSM last week. I wanted to take an upset, and then I heard Acadian was going in, and I said to you, I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm taking Dignitas with Acadian." And I will admit that the amount that I've seen Acadian play as of late is very limited. The last time I watched him was in Academy of Spring. I didn't watch a lot of Academy, I'll admit that as well, but I did watch almost all of the Academy that I did watch for some reason was Dignitas, and Acadian just looked so bad to me every time I watched. And so I had very little confidence with him coming in, and he absolutely ran it down. I wasn't surprised at all. And next thing you know, Dignitas is looking like garbage.
Yeah. Again, like the substitutions, we talked about a little bit when we were talking during our bench updates, but the substitutions don't seem to be fixing anything with this team. If I was the general manager of Dignitas or on this coaching staff, I would be putting in Dardoch and Saligo back in right away as soon as possible. At the very least, I would
You
get.
say that, but
Uh,
you don't know. We don't know what happens
we don't
still.
know, but I would say at the very least we get Saligo back in there because, like, my God,
Yeah.
like Yusui's just useless. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, Acadian's like actually like terrible, and he's like, but I think Yusui is just as bad. Like, it's not even that he's inting as hard as Acadian. He's just having no game impact. It's a
He's
similar.
doing nothing. Actually, you know what? It kind of reminded me of Palafox, because Palafox, we'll get to FlyQuest in a bit, but he's kind of been just doing nothing. That's what it reminded me of. When he played the Ezreal game into the Viego, it felt like Viego just had a free lane to farm up. And who do I think is going to have better team fights come late game if you're just free farming? Ezreal or Viego? I think it's Viego. And it's not that Ezreal's weak, because Ezreal is strong right now. But Viego is so insane when he gets a reset. We've seen him just completely take over fights. And so I don't think it's a good idea to put Viego in a matchup where he gets to free farm, and that's pretty much what he did against Yusui's Ezreal mid. That pick just sucked, and he did nothing the whole game.
Yeah, I don't think Yusui is. Sorry, who's it? Tom Shu. He's the big Yusui fan on Hotline League.
Let's not talk about Tom Shoe, man.
I'm just saying, I don't think Yasui's it, Chief. You
I
get
don't
him out
have
of
the
there.
patience. Yeah. And the other thing too is that I think Fake God has struggled this split as well. I thought that he had a really good spring. I don't think that he's had a really good summer. I was pretty disappointed with his Gnar because I think Gnar was one of his better picks last split. When I saw him with his ulti, I
Oh
don't remember
yeah,
what game it was. That
I know
felt
what you're talking
so
about
bad to
though.
watch, and that it's so crucial that game because I think that's how they lost it. That might have been the TSM one. I'm not sure, but they lost the game off of that fight. If you ask me, they opted to take the fight rather than go to drag. Drag was spawning in like 10 seconds, and they had complete river control. They could have just turned and gone to drag and taken drag. They decided to opt for the fight, and well, there you go. They
Yeah,
whiffed. And, yeah,
I just think every player on this team right now is just performing worse than they were in spring. And I'm talking mid and jungle relative to what we saw last
yeah.
split as well. Like it's just a worse version of what we saw before.
Yeah, I completely agree. Dignitas is monk ass, and if they don't change anything, they're going to continue to be monk ass, and maybe even fall all the way down to 7 or 8 in the playoffs, which was actually insane considering how good of a start they had and how good they even had a good start to summer as well. They were starting to look pretty good, but anyway,
Mm-hmm.
sad.
Alrighty, my immortals up next.
Uh, dude, wow, we did a good job of we are on the same page here. All right, both of us went with Hopium on this one. Feed me your Hopium takes.
Um, they are better than TSM. They should have won that game against TSM.
They're better than they are not better than TSM. Although I'll get behind the fact that they could have won against TSM. Should I don't know about should because that game was kind of back and forth for a while. Um, and you could have argued that TSM should have closed out the game when they were ahead. I think they had drags. I think they were up 3-1 with drags or whatever. Then somehow IMT
Yeah.
just kept coming back and getting another drag. So you could argue both teams should have won. So I
Yeah,
don't really
each
know.
team, like the Barons that were taking in the game, like they got stolen. Like
Yeah,
Speaka stole the
yeah,
one Baron, and then Insanity stole the next Baron with the Zigzar. Oh yeah,
that was
let's
sick,
talk about
man.
that because Ziggs is your favorite champ, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Game was awesome, man. I was like a little bit sad for the IMT guys that they had the Zigs in a base race and you still lost the base race. But like you've said, or like many other people have said, you gotta send someone back there to at least disrupt the Jace from just free splitting and just
When
taking
you
all of
have
your towers
triple
and eventually the Nexus.
TP
Yeah, they had 3 TPs.
and Baron
Just about
recalls, like just like
just about
it's four
anybody could have based
seconds,
there.
just base.
I would be really interested to see what the comms are for that.
I would too.
It would be great because, and I think Kyoto said this on the LCS. He was on the LCS broadcast in between games. They had an interview with him, the IMT coach, and he basically said, "Look, guys, this is something that you don't necessarily practice. This is just a scenario that happens every once in a while. It's very rare, and the team with the better instincts are going to win. And in this case, TSM had the better instincts, and so they ended up getting the W. Now, I actually kind of agree with him on that. Because when or how are you supposed to practice base races?
Yeah, the thing that always gets me for base races, especially when you're in a specific instance where you have one guy solo pushing the base, and then it's a 5v4 on the other side of the map. The thing that always gets me about that situation is if you're the team in the winning position, for example, in this specific game, Immortals was the team in the winning position. I feel like there's no need to go for some random play being let's bum rush the Nexus and hope we win
Yeah, what
because
you're saying, why flip the game if you're winning, right? Is
yeah,
that what you're
like
saying? Yeah.
basically, but yeah, my main thing is just like that's a play that you make when you're the team losing because it's way more likely that you're gonna fuck up your play and then guess what the TSM guy just has a free path to your base with no resistance as opposed to you send somebody you send one person back to base, have that guy back off, fuck up his base, and then you push in the base 4v4. It's just so baffling to me that they went for that play in the winning position with Baron buff, with Insanity on 0 mana. They decided to make that play. Fuck, it really pissed me off because Immortal should have had a 3-0 week. And
So here's why it didn't piss me off, though. I will say it didn't piss me off. Because if you're in a base race, if you told me you're in a base race and you have Ziggs and Baron, I'm like, I'm fucking winning this base race, right? Now, of course, there's way more to it than that. I'm not going to
Yeah,
pretend
but
that,
that's the whole thing.
like,
It's on you. Like if you fuck it
of
up, you
course,
lose the game. And there's
yes,
nothing for there's nothing for them to fuck up. It's just like we just need to stop their base and hope we win.
I'm with you on this. I am with you. I'm playing devil's advocate here as to why I see like I would actually I can see where Immortals is coming from. They're probably like, there's no way we lose this. But as you and I have talked about as well, maybe they got baited by having two Nexus turrets up because they had both turrets up, but they were on like 1 HP. Those turrets, they were like
Yeah.
1 or 2 hits, right? They were 1 or 2 hits. So like they could have been like, oh, we got both our Nexus turrets up, no problem. Maybe they got baited by that. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But the other thing that I do want to say is I want to give credit to, I believe I know Power of Evil did, but I don't know if anybody else did. Whoever was just like, guys, we just gotta fuck with the Ziggs. Because I think he like full engaged on the Ziggs just to make him blow Zonias. I don't think he was able to kill the Ziggs, but you
No,
just have to mess with him because that's the one he's the guy who's gonna be taking down your turrets and ultimately your Nexus.
yeah,
His autos do like half the turret damage.
they got both the Gwen and the Ziggs, the two people who are probably going to be dealing the most damage to objectives,
Yeah.
to pop their Zanyas. And I think while Power of Evil's KDA looked really bad in that game, he was like 1, 2, and 2. He was also another, good player for TSM in that game, basically doing a lot of disruption, whether or not that he got some pivotal, like not even picks, but just chunks in the side lane where he's forcing Revenge to base on 1 HP, or he's forcing Insanity to burn a flash or anything like that. And while his KDA didn't look super cool at the end of the game, I thought he was doing almost as good of a job with Huni in terms of the side lane pressure and, forcing people back to base and sort of playing that game of chess in terms of slowly advancing your position.
Yeah. Now, before we move on from Immortals, I do want to go into a little bit of why I got the Hopium take for them. I think that they've looked good in almost every role at some point. The only guy, even I will say, I do think Race kind of runs it down. He gets some leads sometimes and then just kind of ints away his lead by being in a really bad position. And we've seen Revenge look lackluster on some of his picks. But for the most part, everyone on this lineup has looked good at some point, and especially I think Xerxes been great. I think Xerxes has had such a good split. This is surprising a lot of people. As I've been very vocal to you, JNT, I am not surprised by this. I thought he looked great in spring as well. I just didn't think he got his fair share of recognition for how good he looked. And I think we're starting to see it. His Gragas is nuts. And yeah, I don't know. He looks really, really good. So huge shout out to Xerxes.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that Imperial Mandate build, but he's played it 3 games now. He's won all 3 games on it, and it just seems to be good. Like, I don't know. I remember the first game I saw it, I was like, this has got to be a fucking troll. There's no way that you should be building Imperial Mandate on Gragas. But I think he just does a really good job of, like, hitting these random barrels over the wall to get the Imperial Mandate proc and then to land some poke behind it. He plays that sort of like, he plays the range really well on that champ to get a lot of use out of the item.
Yeah, and the way we talked about Dardoch is the way I feel about Xerxes with his Gragas. He is making plays everywhere, and his ultimates are so good. They're always breaking up the team fight and separating the enemy team. He's actually really good on this pick. I can't say enough about his Gragas.
Yeah,
It's
he
awesome.
did such a good job in that Cloud9 game with Gragas.
Yep. Yeah, I want to see more of it, honestly. We're starting to see more Gragas, and I wonder if, in part, it's because he looks so good on it. I don't know.
We'll have to see.
Maybe, maybe not. Okay, is it time to talk about CLG?
Yep.
Yes! It is time to talk about CLG. How can it not be Hopium? No one's going to pretend that that CLG is all of a sudden this great team. They had a good weekend. They went 3-0, and I'm fired up I'm so happy with this team. They found their identity. They found a way that they're just going to draft. We're going in, and we ain't coming out until the fight's over. And I love it. I don't care if they only have one style that they play, as long as they can play it. Before, they couldn't play jack shit. So they found their identity, whether it's Vi, Galio, Rakan, Kled. I don't care. They're going in, they want to fight, and they're forcing fights really hard, which is exactly what they want to do. They look great doing it, so absolutely Hopium.
Yes. I think CLG had a really good weekend. Yes, they did. They smashed all 3 of their games. They looked really great. on this style of play. Broxa got like the Mastercard Player of the Week, whipping out the first game they whipped out the Vi. Everyone was really confused because that champion hadn't been like played professionally in like 2 years, so people really
Since
didn't.
2019.
Yeah, people really didn't know what to expect with it. But I have some slight reservations about like putting CLG up there with the rest of the middle of the pack teams because, and my only reason for this is because they whipped out this off meta style and they did it in that sort of a fashion. Because if I think back to other instances in the past where a team has sort of started to look good based on one specific style, I fear what it looks like when teams figure out that style, or teams ban out that style, or teams play some sort of counter to your style. Because I think there is merit in catching teams off guard with an off meta comp or an off meta pick and picking up wins because of that. But I'm not completely ready to put all my chips on the table for CLG after.
I don't think anyone is, though, right?
But my point is, the main two instances that I think of when I think of this is I think of Cloud9 at Worlds 2015 when they were in week 1. They went 3-0.
Cloud9 at Worlds 2015, bro. That was forever ago.
Okay, but they played this style at Worlds 2015 in the first week that nobody else was playing, with the Veigar support, the aggressive split pushing ADC into Tristana, and a Zir mid. And all they did in the first 15 minutes of the game was rampage down towers. They would just kill bot turret, then they would kill mid turret, then they would kill top turret, and just dogpile on you with this gold lead in the early game. And then you sort of you went over to week 2, that style got banned out from them. They continually got like Veigar banned and Azir banned from them, and they looked completely horrible. And that was like where the NA 0-10 week was born, because Cloud9, after going 3-0, went 0-4 in the second week and didn't make it out. Then, for my next example, I flash it back to Worlds 2017 with the whole Ardent meta style. And in week 2 of that Worlds, all of the Chinese teams whipped out Caitlyn as this counter pick to the Ardent Sensor meta. Because
Didn't Cloud9 play that as well?
No, they got EDG played it against.
They lost to WE or something. I thought they played WE as Caitlyn or something.
No. This was in week 2 of 2017 Worlds in the group stage. But basically, all the Chinese teams whipped out Caitlyn as this counter pick to this Ardent style, where you would just play. You'd play Caitlyn, you'd poke them down, and you push them out, and they kind of just used it as this like spicy pick to pick up a lot of wins in week 2 of Worlds. And then we saw that strat just completely fall out going into quarterfinals and semifinals. And I just fear that CLG, like, they're just going to look like absolute donkey again if they don't get this comp, because we've seen it even in the past with CLG. Like, last split, they picked up wins against Cloud9 and Team Liquid, and then they drop a fucking shit against Golden Guardians and lose to Golden Guardians. Everyone's like, oh, what the fuck? These guys just beat TL and C9. They're losing to Golden Guardians? Like, I'm glad that CLG is winning games. I feel like the league is more exciting when they win games. They kind of feel like the New York Knicks right now a little bit. But if they just drop a heaping shit next week, like, I don't want the like world to come crashing down. You know what I mean?
No, I think your fears are absolutely warranted because it's CLG, and you're exactly right. We've seen them look good, and then they look bad right after. One of the reasons why I want to go to bat for CLG a little bit, and for all the other CLG fans out there, here's the thing. When it comes to the style that they want to play, there are so many champions that can just dive really hard, right? Like all the things that they've played together, whether it be Vi, whether it be Kled, Galio, Rakan. Like there are so many picks that can hard dive. And so a lot of people are saying, well, what happens when you ban out this or when you ban out that? I would argue that they should still be able to play that style, even if they do get some of their picks banned. Now, I'm not saying that there's a guarantee that happens, but I'm saying that if they're able to hard commit to this style, there should be a lot of backup picks in case some of this stuff gets banned out. That's the one thing that I'll say, and that is absolutely a hopium take. But yeah, I would say that with how good they looked this weekend and how clean they made that style look, I do have some hopium for them moving forward. And no, I don't think they're just going to turn their season around and be amazing. But I do think that this team is no longer a free win. And I mentioned last week, God, I didn't think it would happen so fast, but I mentioned last week that I thought that they would overcome FlyQuest and that they would actually catch up. Well, it looks like they did. A
So
lot
yeah.
quicker than anyone would have expected. No way
Hmm.
in hell did I expect them to catch up this quick. But I think they're going to playoffs, and I think that they will look way better in playoffs than FlyQuest would if FlyQuest makes playoffs.
Speaking of FlyQuest.
I didn't finish with CLG
Oh
yet.
shit, you didn't?
Not yet. Okay, I'll be really quick. Couple things. One, I think they want you to pick Tom Kench into their Galio. There's a reason. I was wondering why they didn't ban it because Tom Kench is normally very good against heavy dive, but in this instance, what it does is it actually just brings a carry and Tom Kench together. So maybe you don't get hit by the Galio knockup, but you do get taunted right after as soon as you spit out the carry. So that's one thing that I noticed when watching their games is they're leaving Tom Kench up on purpose and they're just diving. Tom Kench is devouring and they're going, so what? We got plenty left afterwards. And they're just using the AoE taunt from the Galio to clean them up afterwards. So that's one other quick thought that I had. The last thing that I'll say is Tafo, the GM for CLG,
Oh
was in
god.
Hotline League chat this like an hour ago or whatever. And again, he does this all the time that I need to call him out for this. He plays the victim card all the damn time. He's always like, so the discussion that was happening was um people were saying that CLG might still not look so good and that they're still struggling in some areas and blah blah blah. And Tafo says, well, other teams are struggling as well. Why aren't we talking about them? And look, I actually agree with him that CLG gets way more shit than any other team in the league. They do. But playing the victim card and being like, why are you always so mad at us is not a good look at all for a GM. Stop doing that. Stop it. It's so cringe to see him just complain that no one treats CLG like they do any of the other teams. Well, no one gives a fuck. I'm sorry, but you can't be like that. As a GM, you have to just accept it, put good rosters together, start winning, and then you will be treated with respect by the community. I do, like I said, I do agree with him though that CLG gets way too much shit. But complaining about it is not the right way to go about it. And I've seen him do this 3 or 4 times now over the last 3 years or whatever it's been, and it's just so cringe. So there, that's my. I'm done because I want to be a CLG fan, but Tafel makes it really fucking hard. Okay, Blue Jays fired up. Okay, let's talk about FlyQuest. What do you think, JNT? Was that Monk? Were you Monka S with
Yeah, a
my
little
rant?
bit.
Good. I needed a little bit of fire. I needed to let out. All right. Okay, I'm done ranting now. Let's go FlyQuest.
Yeah,
Uh, Monka S.
I talked about last week and my concerns for this team moving forward, and it's just more of the same. Licorice he had a really bad week this week,
Yes.
like
Yes.
really bad. Like
What
not
guy on this team is doing something? That's what I want to know.
Johnson's doing something. He's taking the
Is he?
crabs.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. That's a good one. Good meme right there. Yeah, seriously, who's doing something though? No one.
Yeah, dude, I don't really have a lot to say about this team. It's just nothing that they're doing is giving me any sort of like hopium at all. Like it's not like, oh, this one guy's playing so well, he can be the reason that they win some games or he can carry some games. It's like, dude, maybe Jose Dioto, like, dude, we're living in an alternate universe. If Jose Dioto gets that 4th mark, they're gonna win that game. I don't buy that shit for a minute. I read that whole Reddit thread talking about like, oh my god, it's extremely pivotal if Jose Dioto would have gotten that 4th stack on Kindred because he would have had 75 extra range to play with in that game. Whatever. It's like, and then you see the opposite side of the conversation where like, how is a professional player getting paid to play this game when he's like intentionally taking the crab away from his team? It's like, dude, like
He's not intentionally doing that. He's autopiloting, and you could tell he's just not. His head's not in the game. You could just tell that he's just like, we need to take this dragon, and I want to make sure we secure vision. That's what he's not thinking of the Kindred clearly.
Yeah,
but
like
he's not inting, guys. Like it's a bad fucking play. Don't get me wrong, but he is not inting the game away. He's not griefing. He's just he had a brain fart. It happens to literally everyone.
yeah, and it's just unfortunate that it was more egregious than others because he is playing with a Kindred. But I don't buy in at all that they would have won this game or Jose Dioto would have been able to do more should he have gotten that stack, because that's just simply not true. And while I don't play or know a ton about Kindred in terms of how those stacks like increase your damage and output and whatnot, I don't think it completely turns the game around for FlyQuest. Is my point.
Well, I do think media the clip was from Meteos' stream, and he was very vocal about how important the fourth stack is on Kindred, and it is important. But to your point, FlyQuest is not a team without flaws. They find so many ways to lose games that one stack, I actually agree with you, probably doesn't have that big of an impact on the game. Now, I want to be clear that it could, but it probably doesn't. And when I say that no one is doing on anything on this team, I really mean no one is doing anything. We talk about proactivity all the time and how important it is to try to make plays happen. I don't see it anywhere. I would have said that last split, I thought Jose Diodo was doing his best to try to make things happen. And maybe his lanes are still so bad that he just can't make anything happen. Maybe that's true. But I don't think Jose Diodo's looked that great either. I think Palafox, he plays a LeBlanc. I'm like, yes, he's going to play LeBlanc. He's going to have such an impact. He's going to be roaming, forcing people summoners, blah, 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 blah. And jack shit happens. And I'm a little bit upset because I love FlyQuest. I want them to win, but I just don't see anything good. It's like they're so low on hopium that there's no room for copium, if that makes sense.
Nice.
Like, I mean it though. There's no hope to cope. I know that sounds like a meme, but I'm being serious. Where does the hope come from this lineup? What are you hopeful for FlyQuest?
Not much.
I don't have anything. And it's so sad because I love this org. I think they're just such a great org, and I really do like all the players. But we've just seen such a drop off from Licorice from last year. Johnson looked good last year. Like these guys are just doing nothing, and I don't know. It's sad to see it, but if I have to be brutally honest, which clearly I am, this team sucks.
Yeah,
Um,
it did feel like, Jose Diodo, Palafox, and Diamond/Dreams were sort of meant to play, were meant to be the role players on this team, and Licorice and Johnson were supposed to be the carries. And it just
yeah,
feels like while Jose Diodo, Palafox, and Dreams still kind of provide that role player kind of style, their carries in Licorice and Johnson are just significantly worse
yeah,
than they have previously been. I think we both recognize that Johnson, I think he got underhyped a lot in 2020,
yeah,
and I'm a bit sad to see that he's just playing like dog shit with FlyQuest, and
yeah.
same with Licorice. I think he struggled towards the end of summer 2020, but it was clear that he was one of the best tops in the league on Cloud9, and he is in the bottom this split for sure.
And I actually would have them power ranked 10th. If we were doing power rankings, I think they are worse than Golden Guardians. Not by a long shot. I think it would be close. But right now, I do think they are the worst team in the league. That doesn't mean I think they'll finish 10th because they are, like, Golden Guardians is 3 wins behind FlyQuest, which is a lot for teams that don't win a lot or that aren't expected to win a lot. But let me say, I won't be surprised if Golden Guardians caught up to FlyQuest. I'm not anticipating, but I won't be surprised. So, yeah. Sad FlyQuest. Hopefully, I have different things to say about them next week. I hope to God they prove me wrong. I want to see FlyQuest pop off, but yeah, they look pretty bad. Golden
All right.
Guardians next.
Yep.
This one, are we different on this one finally? Okay, finally, something different. Okay, I'll let you start. Why is it Monka S? Is it because they're in last place and they just don't win very much?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because they're in last place, but mainly because I think the goal, I would assume, of this team in the summer split was probably to make it to 8th place and contend for at least to get into playoffs, to be maybe 7, maybe 8. But the problem, and why I have them as Monka S, is all the teams that are towards the bottom, minus FlyQuest, are actually starting to win now. Like CLG just got a 3-0 weekend.
Okay.
Immortals has, they've gotten, they went 3-0, 0-3, 2-1, should have gone 0-3, and all the teams that they were somewhat close to in the standings are picking up a lot of wins. And I think other than FlyQuest, I don't think this team now has a shot at all of making playoffs. I think
That's a
before,
very good
I
way of
think
looking at
before
it.
there was a like the way that they were looking right now. I think there could have been a chance for them to make 8th place if CLG continues to be bad and FlyQuest continues to be bad and Immortals continue to be bad. And I think there was signs of that when Immortals did go 0-3 and FlyQuest has looked pretty bad recently and CLG did look really bad recently. But after this week, Immortals picked up 2 wins, CLG picked up 3 wins, and you're still 3 games off of FlyQuest. So I think at this point, you're probably just hoping for CLG to just collapse again, which I don't think personally is going to happen But I mean, again, I don't think CLG is going to become this amazing team. I just think that there's even less wiggle room than there already was with Golden
Yeah,
Guardians in
it's
terms
not
of
even
making
that
playoffs.
it's not even that CLG won't collapse, it's that they won't collapse enough to the point that Golden Guardians catches you.
Exactly.
Could be the argument, right? And don't get me wrong, maybe we're giving way too much fucking credit to CLG because my god, have they managed to collapse in the past. But I think that's just your point, is that yes, CLG can still collapse, but that's a really difficult collapse to fall all the way down below Golden Guardians, especially if CLG is starting to look good. Mind you, it was one weekend. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. The thing that I think it's actually a really interesting outlook for you, how you put them as Monka S, because it's not so much Monka S with how they're playing, but more so how
It's just the
the teams that
situation.
were gonna catch up. Yeah, and that's an interesting way of looking at it. I didn't look at it that way myself. I looked at it as Copium as they're picking up a win every week. But the reason that's Copium is because it doesn't fucking matter when you're in dead last and you're not going to catch anyone. So we kind of have two different takes on it, but kind of looking at it the same way, kind of not. It's really strange. But yeah, to me, it's that okay. You're starting to look good. Let's not even say look good. Let's say you're looking better,
They're
and you're
looking
able to
much
pick up
better
some
than
wins.
they were.
Yeah, right. And to me, like that's great and all, but it doesn't matter. And that's why it's copium, because it's like, hey guys, we're looking better. Hurrah. Oh, does that mean you're gonna go on a playoff run? No, because we're not gonna fucking make it. So that's the problem with Golden Guardians here. But I do think that there are things to be happy about with this roster. I think you're seeing the occasional really good game out of Olive. I wouldn't say we're seeing it on seeing it on a consistent uh pace. What's the word?
Basis.
Consistent basis. Yes, consistent basis. But you are seeing good performances. Same thing with Solo. Sometimes Solo's running it down, but sometimes he's an absolute rock in the top lane, which God did they need a rock in the top lane after how much they were running it down last split in the top lane with Niles. You're seeing some good things. I still think Chime is struggling. Nothing really new for me out of Golden Guardians. I think that Stixay is probably still a good AD carry, but what does it matter when you lose every lane? They lose every fucking lane.
Yeah.
So nothing really has changed for me outside of them looking a little bit better in mid and top.
Yeah. It's, as I mentioned, it's not a Monka S in terms of their performance. It's just a Monka S because
Yeah.
their percentage chance is declining and will continue to decline based
Yeah.
off the performance of the teams above them.
Yeah, with the other teams that you had a chance of catching, you're losing a chance of catching them, and it's not even within. It's out of your control at this point.
Yeah.
Because you've dug yourself such a hole. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm with you. That actually, it's actually an interesting way of looking at it. Um, let's talk a little bit about the broadcast. Because there was some stuff going on about the broadcast. There were some Reddit posts and some replies. You want to fill in people on what the hell I'm talking about, JNT?
Well, basically, there was a tweet. Well, yeah. What we'll say is there was a tweet from Mark Z. I'm gonna lead off with the time in between game stuff, but there was a tweet that Mark Z put out on his Twitter, basically saying how the time in between Nexus explosion and draft start happens, and Mark's basically said that the process is supposed to take around 17 minutes, but it's been extended a lot recently due to there being a ton of technical issues. Plus, it can also extend a little bit further if like a player is in the bathroom or something like that, which is kind of hilarious to me. Like a player's like taking a shit and like delays the game. But there's a ton of tech issues going on. It feels like there's an audio issue at the start of every single game, and it just increases the time in between games at a minimum of like 5 minutes. So pretty much every game, if the average is supposed to be 17, you're adding 5 minutes because of a tech pause, and then you're having a ton of other issues on top of it as well. And it feels like the time in between games is like at the very minimum, like 23 minutes, sometimes even more. And then you have a bunch of pauses in game as well, because for whatever reason this week, there was like a ton of in game pauses.
It feels like it's been like that every week, and we were pretty vocal. Was it last week that we talked about this?
Might have,
Or was it the week before? Regardless,
we've
we were a
talked
little
about
bit
this a
early.
bunch.
We were a little bit early on this one because we did talk about it at some point during summer that look, the broadcast is fucking slow and they got to find a way to fix things. Mark on Hotline Tonight was pretty vocal about like, look, guys, it's not that easy. There's always audio issues and stuff like that. Totally get that. But if I can compare you to LEC or to LCK and I judge how long it's taking an LCS game to start up their second game, there's a noticeable difference. Now it's slow between just about every region. It's slow between games, but LCS it is worse and significantly worse. And so I think that um the complaints are completely warranted. It's such a long freaking broadcast, man.
Yeah, like just this week on Sunday, there was 51 minutes in between the end of the Cloud9 TSM game and the start of the Immortals FlyQuest game. And yes, while there was like a big pause and they had to redo champ select, or they had to like there was a pause at the immediate start of the game and they had to like restart the game, like it just completely turns fans off of the rest of the broadcast because like you look at that day specifically, for instance, there was 3 really great games to start off the broadcast, and then let's be honest, there was 2 games that me personally I wasn't even interested in watching these games, Immortals FlyQuest and Golden Guardians EG. I didn't watch those games. I watched them later that night, just watched the YouTube VOD because there was just such this long there was this huge break in between, and it just completely kills the mood of watching LCS when you have to sit there for an extra 25 minutes doing nothing.
Yeah, it's true. I completely agree. It's really freaking long, honestly. Well, even actually, so we were watching one of the games with Andrew, just one of our friends. And he's not like a huge LCS guy, but I said to him, I was like, "Watch, there's going to be an audio issue before this game starts." Sure enough, there's an audio issue. Like it's to the point that I can just predict there's going to be an audio issue because it happens so freaking often. And I don't know what's going on. Test your equipment. What is happening? How is there an audio issue every single day? How does that happen?
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
I know it just sounds like we're whiny LCS fans, but like, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect a little bit more out of a professional league. It makes you look bad, as if the LCS doesn't look bad enough already. Every time we go to international competition, we can't even run a fucking broadcast.
Yeah, and the other thing that was discussed after Sunday's games was there was a Reddit post talking about the quote unquote post game analysis that was going on after the conclusion of the Cloud9 TSM game. And basically, somebody making a Reddit post talking about how they feel like there isn't a lot of value or even analysis in the quote unquote post game analysis. And it sparked a huge discussion in the Reddit thread with a lot of people agreeing to that point. And I think both of us would also agree to that point. We're at the point where we don't even watch the post game analysis. We would us too. We would rather go to any of the co-streams, but primarily the Sneaky Meteos Doublelift one, and get their take on it, or just to watch them shoot the shit for 30 minutes.
Listen to them say absolutely nothing important, and it's fucking hilarious. It is just so much better than listening to anybody on the LCS broadcast. I'm sorry, it's just the truth. And so, honestly, I don't really care. One thing where I will say I'm a little bit more forgiving to the people that do the broadcast is that, like you said, there were people that weren't happy that there wasn't enough analysis about how TSM beat Cloud9. For me, I don't think that there's. While I totally understand a TSM fan would want to hear the analysis because they're hyped up about the game, I don't think it's that easy because you kind of prep this stuff beforehand and you're like, okay, well look, we've got a really hype match coming up between 100 Thieves and Team Liquid. Like it's really important to hype up to
that
this
happened
game
prior
so that
though.
Was that a different? That
Well,
was different.
What you're referring to
You're
was
right.
that
No, you're right.
was that
You're totally right.
the TL 100 Thieves game happened before that one, and then instead of doing a lot of post game analysis on the game that had just happened, they flipped back to the previous one.
You're actually right. I got a little bit confused as to the ordering of the games there. So in that case, then I am a little bit curious as to what they decided to talk about instead. Honestly.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't know what they talked about because we didn't watch it because we're not interested in it.
Give a shit. Yeah.
It just feels
boring.
It feels
it's boring.
Yeah, it feels like even your average consumers are now having a problem with the content because I think when you're when you're not an average consumer and you're constantly watching the LCS broadcast, you don't feel the need to watch all the various pre and post game content. You can kind of skip around it and go to other sources for your analysis / entertainment. But now it seems that even the average viewers are starting to dismiss these things as well, which is a problem.
Well, and
a big problem.
I guess what I'll say is the point that I was going to make still applies, though. The point is that they still plan all this stuff ahead of time, and you don't know that Cloud9 versus TSM is going to be a banger or not a banger. Now, you do know that it's 2 of your most popular teams, so there's that, but you don't know what the game's going to look like, and so you kind of commit to doing whatever it is you want to do in between that little bit of time that you do have. You don't have time, and thank God they don't decide to break down the former game and break down a preview to the game that's coming up, because if they did that, my God, these half an hour time windows in between games would quickly become 45 minutes, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah.
But anyways, last thing I'll say is that you pointed this out, and it's something that I think they definitely need to look into. The player cams are ahead of the broadcast again, and it's
Oh god.
spoiling.
Yeah. So what game was it? It was the CLG versus
It was
EG
the
game.
base race as well. The base
Oh
race,
yeah. Well, yeah.
you can see the players are already happy or mad, and it's like, oh, there's a race happening. Like
Yeah. But
that sucks.
what's the game? It was the game where Finn was playing Kled and he fucked up the 1v1 level 2. What game was that?
Yes.
Was that against EG?
Who was he playing against?
It was Kled versus
Feel
Lee
like he was
Sin.
against Impact. That sounds
Well,
right.
my point is as Jamie said, or Billy J said, the player cams are ahead of the actual game itself. So Finn is mid 1v1 on the broadcast, and Finn is like 200 HP, Impact 200 HP, and all of a sudden, I see out of the corner of my eye, Finn on his player cam throwing his hands up in his head like he fucked up, and I was like, oh, Finn just lost the 1v1. And then 2 seconds later, you see Finn completely fuck it up, flash over the Lee Sin. Like, it was just like, it was too obvious to not blurt out, because like it was clear that he lost the 1v1 and he obviously had some major mechanical fuck up, and it was just like, dude, like that stuff really ruins the product. Like as you mentioned, in the TSM versus Immortals base race, you see the players reacting to happy, even the overlay of the broadcast gets removed. It gets removed like a couple seconds early, and we're like, what the fuck just happened to the game? And then like 2 seconds later, the camera's panning to the TSM Nexus. It felt like a little repeat of what happened in like IG versus KT in that game, where like they were doing the split screen and then they panned down to the IG base because they were like, oh, these guys are going to win, lol. But then KT won, so it had to flip all the way back. It just felt really awkward, and like moments are kind of getting spoiled, and it's just
that
bad.
Is definitely bean soup. Braden using the bean soup
it's
in the live chat. Absolutely.
I mean, I was about to say it's understandable when it happened on the online broadcast and they had like a 5-minute delay, but let's be honest, it was honestly not that I'm talking about, remember the game against FlyQuest where the cams ended like 5 minutes early?
Yes, I do.
So like
that was in the finals. That was in
yes,
it
was the finals, and that can be somewhat understandable because they were on an online broadcast, still a major oversight. But when they're in the studio like this shit cannot be happening. Like, I do not want to be watching the LCS finals or like a playoff game, and shit is just getting spoiled for me. And while people could just say like, oh, it's like 2 seconds, whatever. It's like, dude, like it just ruins the hype moment of the play.
Matters.
Like
does.
when I was watching Finn throw his hands up in his head, like I knew what had happened already. Like it made his fuck up it didn't make it hilarious because I knew it was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't even see it, and you were like, "Oh, Finn lost," and I'm like, "Oh man!" Like I didn't. I was so hyped for the Kled pick as well, and as you guys know, I'm obviously cheering for CLG. That was so. I literally thought they lost the game right there. Clearly, they didn't, but I was like, "Wow, they just lost the game." He was about to 1v1 him. He was going to take over this game as Kled, and sure enough, he didn't. But anyways, I think we flamed the broadcast enough. Again, we do plenty of that on this show. Let's move on to something else. What do we got? Awards.
Pop off bean soup.
Yeah, speaking of bean soup, I mean that was absolutely bean soup. Let's get into the awards. Okay, pop off. JNT, go.
Hooney
absolutely popped off this weekend. Yeah, he looked so fucking good. Back to my hopium takes. Look, if Hooney is going to look this good on a regular basis, I'm not going to say it's going to happen on the regular basis because I think he has been a little bit inconsistent. But look, if he looks this good on a regular basis, TSM does have a chance to make a really good playoff push. I don't know if I'm ready to say that they'll win it yet, but yeah, he looked great.
Yeah, I thought, at the end of last split, he was the third best top in the league, and I would say with his performance so far in summer, 1/3 of the split through, I would say it's still about there.
Who else is ahead of him?
I don't know. He's there at the least. Maybe you could argue Fudge is up there, not recently.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into that because maybe Hooney is the best top laner right now, but I don't want to take too much
he's
time
at the minimum top 3. I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. He's looked very, very good. I went with CLG, baby, because why wouldn't I go with CLG?
I knew you were gonna go with CLG stuff, so that's why I didn't go for CLG stuff.
I'm just so happy. Like, it's nice they get one weekend where they 3-0 and they look really, really good. It's all hopium from here. I'm not going to repeat any of the stuff I said. They looked good. They found a style,
Hey,
and I'm really excited.
you
I'm
should
really
do it while
excited
you
to see.
can. You should do it
Sure,
while you can.
I'm really excited while they have this opportunity, or while I have the opportunity to do it. I'm really excited. So yeah. Anyways, Bean Soup, go.
Blabber.
Blabber sucks right now. I think he has to turn it around, but
Yeah.
he is running it. He is running it. I plain and simple. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just think the crazy part was in that TSM game, it wasn't even like he was going for plays and inting them. Like he just wasn't doing anything on that Xin Zhao game. He made that one top tower dive, but then he wasn't being Blabber. Like it's understandable for Blabber to go for a play and int, but in that TSM game, he was just doing nothing, and that is not the Blabber way.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I went with 2. I know I'm not supposed to do this,
You're
but
kind of a cheater about this stuff all the time.
I had 3 things, and I
You're
was like, I'm
more of
gonna
a
pick one
cheater.
by the start of the show. I'm gonna pick one by the start of the show, and I narrowed it down to 2. One of them is not a
Can
real
you-
one. The one I'm giving myself for not taking CLG in my predictions last week. I
Yeah, that
paid
doesn't
0
count.
taxes, and I paid the price for it. So that's one. The other one is a real one. The Dig roster changes. That is so disappointing to me because I was really excited to see how good this team could be and where they would finish at the end of summer. The rosters, that is so bean soup. Absolutely. Like, come on. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think that's fair to have 2 bean soups if they're super short like that.
Sure.
Sure.
One-time exception.
Okay. What's next?
Got our week 4 game predictions.
I realized this later. I didn't know that you swapped to CLG.
Yeah,
That
I
made me
tweeted it.
even more salty. Yeah, I know. That's how I found out. That made me even more salty about not being able to make the swap because, well, I think Acadian's kind of garbage.
Caca.
I was so sad that I didn't make the swap to CLG because I wasn't watching the games live. For those of you that don't know, I wasn't able to make the swap because I was AFK this weekend.
You snooze, you lose,
AFK.
kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed the time you tweeted out as well. J&T waits until 4:22 or I guess 1:22 for you West Coasters because he doesn't want me to see that he swapped his prediction. Catch on. I know what happened here.
I just started watching. I just turned on the broadcast and was like, I'm gonna switch to CLG because they've been looking good. It wasn't like wasn't one of those kind of things.
We'll see. Anyways, I was really salty because I did not swap. And in all fairness, I say that I would have swapped to CLG, but it's not fair to be like, oh, we'll give you that one. Like, no, that's a bad precedent. I did not take CLG, and that's why I gave myself bean soup. I took Dig, and I paid the price for it. Let's get into this week's predictions. EG Team Liquid.
Team Liquid.
I am gonna go Team Liquid.
I feel like again, like EG won the first matchup. I just don't trust Jizuke at all. I have no faith in him. So
honestly, I don't trust either team at this point.
I trust Team Liquid more than I do EG.
Neither team is consistent in showing what they're supposed to show, but I still think Team Liquid is just a little bit better. So Team Liquid.
Okay, 100 Thieves. Dignitas.
100 Thieves. And
yeah.
If they announce Dardock's back in, I'll rethink it, but I still think 100 Thieves is hands down the best team right now. 100 Thieves.
All right. Cloud9 Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians beat Cloud9 first time round.
You're trying to bait me.
I mean, no, I'm just stating the facts.
Yeah, they did.
Cloud9
for me. Yeah.
Okay. Immortals versus CLG.
Whoa, here we go.
I'm taking Immortals.
I am taking CLG. Taxes will be paid for the better or worse. Let's go CLG. Don't let me down.
Well, here's the thing. Actually, okay, maybe I'm going to backtrack here because.
Come on.
Well, do you want to hear my logic?
Yeah,
because it's pretty sound logic, I would say.
Okay.
Immortals plays like donkey on even weeks, so.
That sucks.
that's my
weeks. What? Because it's week 4. You're like,
yeah.
That's.
They play really well on the odd weeks and really terribly on the even weeks.
All right, are you taking Immortals or
yeah,
CLG?
I'll take Immortals for now.
Okay, you got to come up with something better than that. I don't mind if you swap, but you got to come up with something better than that. Okay,
all right.
TSM FlyQuest. FlyQuest is 3-0 against TSM this year. There, take that bait.
TSM
next.
Okay, Team Liquid versus CLG. Jamie.
I can't pay my taxes here. Nope.
Well, okay, well, what if?
I will be cheering for CLG. I will say that.
What if Team Liquid looks terrible against EG, and CLG smashes Immortals. Will you switch on day of?
I would have to see some really good games out of CLG and some really bad games out of TL. Like, there's a chance TL loses and they look bad, and there's a chance CLG wins and they look good, but I still probably wouldn't swap. There's just too big of a. I don't know. I don't think so, anyways. But for now, TL over CLG.
Team Liquid for me too. FlyQuest versus Dignitas, the battle of
Ooh.
the shitters right now.
Battle of the Monka S teams.
I feel I'm gonna go with FlyQuest for now, but with the condition that I'm gonna take Dig should a roster swap be made. As in Dardoch or Saligo comes back in.
If Dardoch's playing, I'm taking Dignitas no matter what. And if he's not playing, I think I'm still taking Dig. And so for that reason, I should just take Dig, I guess.
There you go. 100
I think
Thieves
is the worst team right now. So there you go.
All right, 100 Thieves versus Cloud9. I'm gonna take 100 Thieves, but if my instincts are correct, on the condition that Sven's coming back in, I will switch to Cloud9 on the day of.
I'm calling this, guys. He's swapping. I didn't even hear. I know you said something about changing right now. I was kind of daydreaming, but I'm calling it anyways. JNT 250 will be swapping this pick in the middle of the week. He's gonna be in Vegas or something. He's gonna be partying, and it'll be like, I gotta swap my pick to Cloud9.
Sorry, I'm giving them. I'm copium. They're gonna win. Dude.
Okay, all right. We're both 100 Thieves though for now.
Yeah, for now.
All right. Next, EG and TSM. Oh Jesus! I don't know,
Again, I just have the instinctual feeling that EG's gonna win this game.
Yeah, I actually have that feeling as well. But like these teams are both so inconsistent. I don't know what to think. TSM finds a way to win their games though.
Yeah. Dude, I really am not liking this week because I really think that both Cloud9 and Dig are gonna make roster subs. So I feel like a lot of that is going to change my predictions for a lot of these matches because
I'll go EG. I'll
take TSM. Again, I worry that I'm going to switch my pick based on Friday performances. Okay. Lots of Immortals, Golden Guardians. No switching here. Immortals.
Okay. Next we got Dig versus EG.
I'm going to take EG for now, but again,
EG.
I think my mind could be swung should a sub happen for the Dig side. Immortals. 100 Thieves. Immortals beat 100 Thieves in the first week of the split, but I will take 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves as well. Boy, we are really anticipating this Dig swap, eh?
If it doesn't happen, but like this is the problem. If it doesn't happen, like do they honestly think that running this roster is better than the previous? Because I like you know what
I forgot to mention? I forgot to mention this before when we were talking about the benchings. But the announcements for benching Saligo and benching Dardoch were different.
Yeah,
remember Fifth Lane came out in his video was like, yeah, like we think that this is good for Yusui and for Saligo to grow and blah blah blah, all this bullshit. And then Dardoch, they just tweet like, yo, Dardoch's benched. like he fucked up, man. He did something wrong. So I don't know if he's coming back. Anyway.
Yeah, weird.
Okay, where were we? We said we're
both
each taking 100 Thieves over IMT.
Yeah.
And then TSM. TSM is 3-0 versus TL this year.
Like this is the game where TSM can either win or lose the respect of I think the both of us, because while they're first place, I think we recognize that they are still most likely going to get passed by 100 Thieves, TL, and Cloud9, should TL and Cloud9 get their shit together. And
Opium.
Yes, exactly. And if TL wins this game, it's just going to be like, okay, well, this is what we thought TSM was going to happen. But if they win this game and they have a 3-0 weekend, it's like, how do you deny them at that point?
TSM is who we thought they were. Is that what you're telling me, Jay?
Pretty much.
That's a soundbite for those of you that don't know. Look it up. I don't know. The Bears are who we thought they were. Okay. I'm taking Team Liquid. Am I taking? Oh man, I don't know, man.
I don't know either, to be honest.
Okay, does it just feel like this is the hardest time for predictions that we've ever had?
Yeah, it does actually. Because again, I think we're both under the assumption that there's going to be roster moves, but you can't it's hard to factor that in.
Team Liquid. I can't. There's no way Team Liquid loses 4 in a row to TSM. Team Liquid.
Huh.
Okay, FlyQuest and wait. Did you
I
pick
didn't
a team?
know. I'm gonna pick Team Liquid.
Okay, all right. Next is FlyQuest and Golden Guardians.
I know who you're
Now,
taking.
if I say FlyQuest is the worst team in the league right now, naturally, I gotta go Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians, let's go, baby.
I'm gonna pick FlyQuest. I don't know.
Johnson Simp,
Maybe.
aren't we all? Okay. Next up we have CLG Cloud9.
Huh.
I
Another
man,
interesting
like
one.
such like opposite trajectories. I guess I should do like this. Like I don't know. Anyway, um, shit, man. I'm thinking about this.
Cloud9 for me.
C9, right? Yeah. Okay.
I'll just
Never lose hope.
I'll put it out here right now. Like I'm gonna switch a bunch of my predictions when the weekend comes around. Like don't.
I try not to be a flip flopper. Like
But-
we what is the point? We do this all the time and then
But
we
he-
swap
but-
play.
but-
Why do we even do this?
But here's the thing: is like we're making predictions on the Monday night when games are still on Friday. When it's most likely that if teams are gonna make subs, they're gonna make them on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday morning. So we're making predictions with not all the information. Plus, like you gotta take into account like how teams are performing on the weekend. Like
You're really anticipating some big subs
Yes.
this week, eh?
well, I'm not big, but I feel like should Dig make subs, that's gonna heavily affect the two games of FlyQuest Dig and EG Dig. And should Cloud9 make subs, that is gonna affect my 100 Thieves Cloud9.
Okay, I'll give you a chance to pick up some bonus points here. Not real bonus points, but just I don't know, some
Brownie
fucking credit
points.
or some shit. Yeah, sure.
Clown
What is
coins.
the most likely sub? Like which one are
Sven.
you like this one? You think Sven is
Sven.
back and
If it doesn't
okay.
happen, I don't know. I'll think of something.
You can't say if it doesn't happen then some other one. No, I said which one. You're going with
Well,
Sven.
I was
Okay,
gonna
so-
I was gonna like put something on the line there, but
Okay. Oh. Yeah, okay, let's take some time. Put something on the line, JNT. What do you got?
I don't got anything.
Yeah, I don't got anything either. Okay, so we're both going Cloud9 against CLG. That closes out the predictions. JNT promises to flip flop everything. You heard it here first.
Yep.
And we'll give you some bonus points.
I don't
if
care.
Sven is subbed in, you get to say next week I was right with probably half of Cloud9 fans. Okay. Quick news. Let's go.
Alrighty. First up, Dokla, former TSM Academy, former Optic, former bunch of fucking teams he played on. He's on TL Academy now. He's playing the Academy games for Jenkins, who is playing both Academy and LCS for the first like a week and a half.
I like Dokla. I'm happy for him. I think he's a good top laner. Do I think he is a great LCS top laner? By no means. No. He's always been bottom LCS when he's been in the LCS, but I think he's a good guy. I'll be cheering for him. The only other thing I'll say is maybe Monka S if you're a TL fan. Because like did you really need a top laner if Alfari was only going to be out for another week? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they think Jenkins might play top for a little bit longer. I don't know. Oh, okay. We forgot to bring it up. Someone in the live chat brought this up a little while ago. But Sven, who tweeted it out? Was it
Oh, yeah,
Sven or was it
Sven-
Alfari? We
Sven
forgot to
posted
bring it
a-
up.
Sven posted a picture with Alfari, and it's like announcement coming soon, and it's like both of them smiling.
So thank you to whoever brought that up in the live chat. I said we'll talk about it soon, and then I forgot. Okay, yeah, big announcement soon. It's a picture of Sven and Alfari. It's kind of interesting because Sven hasn't said pretty much anything since he's been benched. He's been very, very quiet. If he said anything, it was probably not much. I don't really remember, but yeah, I haven't heard much out of him lately. And so I don't know what kind of troll ass bullshit this is, but I like it. Whatever it is,
It's
good.
stirring the pot.
Stir in the pot. So you got Sven taking a picture with Alfari, and Alfari's got the thumbs up. I don't know what this means.
Just
I have no idea.
just to point this out, I did not make my statements about me having confidence that Sven is going to come back in, or me thinking that like that's what I'm most confident in. I said that before this tweet had come out. I just want to say that.
This came out like half an hour ago, guys, or whatever.
And I didn't even see it until it was mentioned in the Twitch chat, which was like tweeted been up for
Yeah.
like 12 minutes.
Yeah, shout out to Zexus for that. Much appreciated. Okay, what else? What were we
Next
talking
up,
about?
well, Dokla joined TL Academy. Who cares? Who cares?
Okay, next.
Team BDS is buying Schalke's LEC slot for 30 million euros.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this team, but we know who's buying the spot now. So whatever BDS is going to be, hooray! Do you know anything about them? I don't know shit.
Nope, I think they're in EU Masters.
Oh, okay.
I don't. Well, like they're in a regional league. That's about it. Next up, some Damwon news over in the LCK. They themselves have joined the LCS in benching Ghost. They're starting 80 carry, and in a pretty huge shakeup, honestly. Showmaker, their mid laner, is moving to ADC. Canyon, their jungler, is moving to mid, and Malrong, their backup jungler, is now their starting jungle. And
Yeah,
they've already played this roster in one LCK series so far, in which they actually look pretty good.
I watched it and I still don't really remember much about it. I remember Showmaker looked pretty good on Ezreal. That's about all I remember.
Yeah, I like world champions, MSI finalists. They're making roster changes too. Like, I wonder what that's going to look like.
Crazy to your point because
Exactly.
it's affecting more than the one lane, right? It's affecting 3 lanes.
Exactly.
Now.
It's not like they just put in their sub ADC. They like shifted their whole team. Like they moved Showmaker ADC. They moved their jungle. Like imagine if Cloud9 subbed out Sven. They put Perks.
I mean, Perks
ADC.
played 80 carry.
No,
this
but
is
still.
Example.
No. They put Blabber into jungle. Blabber into mid lane, and they had Schernfire playing jungle on their starting roster. That'd be fucking crazy.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. But I will say that there is not generally, there just is more depth in the LCK than there's going to be in LCS Academy. No big surprise there. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. And a little bit more of a copium take. See, guys, even world champions got to sub out all their star players all the time. This is totally fine. More copium. Okay, next. What's next?
Golden Guardians, they added Apollo and Jido, whoever that guy is.
I got hard baited because I'm a huge Apollo fan. I thought, oh my god, Apollo's going to play for Golden Guardians. Not that I wanted them to get rid of Stixay or anything, but I just like Apollo. And so I thought he was going to be back in the LCS. I got baited by this, but hey, I'm still happy for Apollo. He found a place, and that guy's awesome. I really like him. So yeah.
Next up, this is actually pretty significant news potentially. Uzi, yes, that's correct. Uzi, RNG Uzi, said on his stream that he wants to play on a pro team in 2022.
And so did Doublelift. He tweeted it out. Just kidding. I mean, Doublelift did,
but
he
memed about it.
Yeah, he was just memeing. But yeah, this is kind of crazy, guys. This is like one of the best players ever coming back.
This is like big news.
Yeah, I will be interested to see where he goes. I will be interested to see how good he is after taking a break. Because sometimes you come back from a break, you ain't so hot no more.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come back and everything's fine, like Doublelift. Because Doublelift, I mean, he's done that. But I mean, yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, like the way that it was outlined, like he's not rejoining RNG because he was like, when my contract expires, I'm gonna go try to join a team. You get the feeling that it's not gonna be with RNG. Pretty crazy to think because Uzi's been playing on RNG since season 3, I think.
Yeah.
Back when they were
a while, long time.
I don't even know. They've gone through a bunch of iterations of their name before they went to RNG. There was like Royal Club and like Starhorn Royal, and then like I don't know, he's been there since the start basically. And to see what I would say maybe is the second most prolific league player of all time coming out of retirement and wanting to play again, pretty big news.
Yeah, definitely big news. The only thing that would be bigger is if Faker retired and came back, I think.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else I'm missing?
No,
that's probably the biggest one. What's next?
Next up, last thing. There was a teaser for the new league event / preview for the next champion coming out. It's some shit that's happening on July 8th.
I didn't see this. Oh, July 8th, Dad's birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. I didn't even see this. You gotta show me this stuff.
Well, it was like that. You watched that video. It was like the Ruin Nation thing, like that.
That's what
with
that
the
was?
fog and yeah, that was like part of the teaser. And then there was this photo that they released of like a bunch of those kind of champions. It was like Senna, Lucian, and like Viego. There was like a little picture, and you could see the new champ kind of in there.
Oh, okay. Well, damn. Maybe I need to see this photo. That video was like nothing but fog, and I absolutely loved it. Like that was hype. I was like, yes. I don't know what this is, but I love it.
That's it.
Okay, that's it for this week's episode. We went a little bit longer than J&T would have liked. Next week, we think we're going to be on schedule, right? That's the plan for now.
As long as my flight doesn't get delayed.
J&T is heading off to Vegas. He's too cool to party with any of us or whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, have a good time in Vegas, J&T. Hope you don't die. Hope you make it back safe. Hope you don't party too hard. We are going to be back at the same time next week then, if you say so. So Monday nights, right after Hotline League for you Hotline League fiends. And remember, for those of you that are in live chat right now, if you're not subscribed on YouTube, please go find us on YouTube and catch the whole VOD if you missed some. And for those of you that are listening on YouTube and you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. It helps us a lot. You guys' support has been great. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more. Thank you guys so much for all the help. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole shebang, as long as it's by Anchor. Anything Anchor supported
podcast platforms. Yes.
You will find us on there. Anything else to shout out J&T?
No.
Okay, this has been episode 47 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Thank you guys so much. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.